Every morning you wake up, you're given a gift, one more day. But the real question is, what are you doing with it? Most people sleepwalk through life, stuck in the same cycles, dragging the same thoughts from yesterday into today, expecting different results. And yet they wonder why nothing changes. But here's the truth: no one wants to hear your life is a reflection of your mindset. Your habits, your choices, your relationships, your progress, all of it starts and ends in your mind. You can't change your world until you change the lens you see it through. And for the next 14 days, I challenge you to shift your lens to unlock the power that's already within you. There's a reason most people never change. It's not because they don't want to. It's because they don't realize how deep their patterns go. Every single day you wake up, you're already in motion. Your mind already thinking, judging, reacting, predicting. And for most, the thoughts they think today are recycled from yesterday. That's why change feels impossible. That's why goals collapse. That's why dreams remain untouched. The world tells you to work harder, hustle more, push through. But very few tell you the truth. If you want to change your life, you have to change your mind. Not just once, not just when you feel like it, but consistently, deliberately, relentlessly. And if you commit to watching something that speaks truth to your potential for just 14 straight days, not once, but every single day, your mind will start to shift. Your lens will change. And what you see in yourself will never be the same again. Because the first battle is not against the world. It's against the voice inside your own head. That voice that whispers you're not enough. That voice that replays every failure, every shortcoming, every rejection like a broken record. But what if that voice was never yours? What if it was built from the outside in, built from pain, built from opinions, built from a past that no longer defines you? That's why these 14 days matter. Because you're not just listening, you're replacing. You're erasing the voice of fear and replacing it with the voice of truth. You're stripping away the noise that has kept you stuck and building a new internal soundtrack. One that believes in you, one that challenges you, one that refuses to let you stay where you are. And at first, it won't feel natural. It won't feel easy. The voice of doubt is comfortable because it's familiar. That's why people stay in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, habits that destroy them. Not because they like them, but because they've built their identity around limitation. And the moment you threaten that limitation with a new belief, your mind will push back. It will say, that's not you. You can't do that. That's not realistic. But here's the truth: everything great was once unrealistic. Every success story you've ever admired was once laughed at. Every powerful leader, athlete, thinker, builder, at some point, they were just a person who chose to believe differently, speak differently, act differently. And the only thing that separated them from the rest was their mindset. When you hear the same empowering truth for 14 days straight, your mind doesn't just store it, it starts to believe it. Your brain is a sponge. It absorbs repetition. That's why negative self-talk becomes automatic. You've said it enough times. But what happens when you feed it new words, new standards, new expectations? You begin to upgrade your internal system. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying and start seeing yourself as someone becoming. You stop saying, maybe someday, and start saying, why not now? There is nothing mystical about transformation. It's discipline. It's exposure. It's conditioning. It's about exposing yourself to something stronger than your excuses, long enough for your excuses to die out. Because excuses can't survive in an environment of truth. But most people don't expose themselves to that environment long enough. They start a video, hear a few words, feel a little fire, and then they walk away unchanged, going right back to the thoughts that broke them in the first place. But what if, instead of walking away, you stayed with it? What if you chose to hear the same voice of power every single day until it drowned out every other voice? You wouldn't just change your mind. You'd change your decisions. You'd change your emotions. You'd change the way you walk into a room, the way you speak to others, the way you handle pain, pressure, and setbacks. You wouldn't need to try to be confident. You'd become confident, because when you see yourself clearly, everything else starts to fall into place. Most people want motivation to strike like lightning, but real transformation doesn't come from a flash of inspiration. It comes from fire. Fire that's lit slowly, every single day, with every single word you let into your soul. That's why your environment matters. That's why your habits matter. Because your mind is always listening, and when it hears weakness, it believes weakness. When it hears strength, it believes strength. You don't get to rise while feeding yourself the same broken narratives. You don't get to evolve while surrounding yourself with decay. You've got to feed your future more than you feed your fear. 14 days. That's all it takes to start the shift. Not because 14 is magic, but because it's enough time to build a rhythm. And rhythm becomes routine. And routine becomes identity. And once your identity shifts, your life shifts with it. It's no longer a question of, can I? It becomes a declaration of, I will. That shift is everything. Because when your identity changes, you no longer act in opposition to your goals. You act in alignment. You don't sabotage your progress because progress becomes your default. You don't second guess your decisions because you've built trust with yourself. You show up not just when it's convenient, but when it's inconvenient. You push not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. That's the power of mindset. It gives you the ability to be consistent even when your emotions aren't. Imagine this: you wake up, and the first thing you hear is not noise, not negativity, not fear, but truth. You hear that you are capable. You hear that your pain has a purpose. You hear that you don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You hear that your future isn't tied to your past. And you don't just hear it once, you hear it over and over until it becomes part of you. Until you walk different. Until you talk different. Until people look at you and say, you've changed. And you won't even have to respond because they'll see it. It'll be in your eyes, in your posture, in your tone. That's the transformation most people miss. Not the loud kind, but the quiet kind. That shifts everything. Most people think changing your mindset is about forcing yourself to be positive. It's not. It's about replacing the lies you've believed with a truth that you've earned. And truth is earned by consistency. That's what this 14-day challenge is really about. Not hype, not feeling good for a moment, but building a habit of exposure. Exposing your mind to strength, to clarity, to truth, to vision. And when you build that habit, your mind starts to reject anything that doesn't match it. Just like your body rejects junk food after weeks of clean eating, your mind starts to reject weakness when it's been fed strength. You won't even notice the full shift on day 1, or day 3, or maybe even day 7. But by day 14, something deep will have moved inside you. You'll catch yourself thinking a thought you've never thought before. You'll notice yourself making a decision that reflects a new level of belief. You'll respond to pressure not with panic, but with poise. And it won't be because someone else did it for you. It'll be because you did the work. You made the choice. You stayed in the fire long enough for the old you to burn off and the new you to rise. That's why you watch daily. Not for entertainment, not for temporary hype, but to rewire, to reprogram, to rise. You've given fear enough days. You've given insecurity enough time. You've given limitation too much power. It's time to reclaim your mind. Because once your mind is free, everything else follows. Your relationships shift. Your discipline grows. Your goals become real. You stop settling for almost. You stop apologizing for dreaming big. You stop shrinking to fit in. You take up space. You walk into rooms with purpose. You handle adversity with confidence. You lead with vision. And it all begins with one choice: to expose your mind to something greater every single day. Not because you have to, because you're ready. Ready to let go of the version of you that's been holding you back. Ready to meet the version of you that's been waiting to be unlocked. Ready to see what happens when you show up for yourself consistently. That's the gift of the next 14 days. That's the power of focused exposure. You'll stop looking for permission. You'll stop needing validation. You'll stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I fly? Because the truth is, the life you want already exists. The question is, are you willing to become the person who can receive it? The person who can carry it? The person who's strong enough, focused enough, grounded enough to build it? That person is already inside you. They've just been buried under the noise, the doubt, the years of self-neglect. But not anymore. Not after this. Not after 14 days of truth. You're not just watching, you're rising. You're not just listening, you're becoming. Momentum doesn't whisper, it roars. The instant you ignite inner fire, something ancient stirs. Not rage, not noise. Something older, something certain. It's the spark that existed before uncertainty crawled into your skin. It isn't taught, it's remembered. Buried deep beneath hesitation and comparison lies an awareness untouched by opinion. It has no name, yet you've always known it. It arrives before sound, before language, before logic. And once it surfaces, it doesn't fade, it grows. It breaks through hesitation like sunlight pierces fog. No hesitation, no debate, only movement. And in that space, everything alters. Direction becomes instinctive. Energy stops leaking. You stop waiting for an invitation. You stop bracing for impact. You begin constructing from within. No blueprint necessary, just rhythm, just force. Because when that inner switch flips, timelines collapse. What once felt impossible now feels overdue. You're not hauled away. You're already in motion. Each breath becomes decisive. Each minute carries weight. You no longer think about alignment, you become it. And that's when silence becomes louder than applause. You look around, and what used to impress you now feels irrelevant. Not because it lacks merit, but because you've discovered the real metric: integrity. Alignment without an audience. Drive without supervision. Hunger without validation. It's a different realm, not better, not higher, just deeper. One where outcomes don't define the journey, where fulfillment doesn't require permission, where legacy isn't something left behind, it's something embodied now. External distractions lose their hold. Sensory clutter, digital loops, aimless chatter, they fade. Not because you resist them, because you've outgrown them. Their frequency no longer resonates with what you're becoming. And it's not arrogance, it's clarity, not superiority, simplicity. You're not above anyone, you're just anchored differently. You're no longer searching for something out there to feel whole. You've remembered that construction begins inside, not outside. And this remembering, it carries an edge. Because once awareness sharpens, tolerance narrows, you stop entertaining chaos, you stop negotiating your worth, you stop justifying your pace. You release roles you never agreed to. You stop carrying stories that never belonged to you. And in that release, strength forms. Not brittle, not loud, steel-like, silent, focused, undeniable. Where fatigue once dictated rest, now devotion dictates repetition. Not from obligation, not from fear, from conviction. Your relationship with time recalibrates. Minutes expand, hours contract. You accomplish without urgency. You build without force. You serve without depletion. Because now your essence leads, not your effort. You're not chasing anything. You're responding to an inner pull that's non-negotiable. Comparison withers. Why? Because there's no room for envy where creation lives. You're not competing. You're channeling. You're not watching. You're building. And in that flow, others feel it. Not everyone will understand it. Some will misread it. That's fine. Evolution is rarely recognized mid-transformation. The ones who get it feel it. The ones who don't react. Neither response changes your direction. Judgment stops registering. Resistance becomes irrelevant. Praise loses its grip. Because you're not operating for reward. You're operating from essence. You've exited the game of approval. You've dropped the mask of politeness. You've left the stage built for applause. Now, it's about contribution, quiet, real, raw contribution, without filters, without packaging, just substance, just presence. And that presence, it carries impact, not in likes, in lives. You walk into a room and the atmosphere rearranges, not from posture, from frequency. You stop being someone who merely speaks. You become someone who shifts, not with slogans, with conviction. You stop trying to inspire. You become inspiration. Not through effort, but embodiment. You've become the thing people chase, but you didn't arrive here overnight. You showed up when it didn't feel urgent. You pushed when no one clapped. You repeated when boredom knocked. You leaned in when distractions called. And because of that, something grew. Invisible to most, unstoppable to you. Something unshakable began forming. Not fame, not followers. Foundation. Foundation isn't glamorous. It's not made for headlines. It's made for storms. And storms do come. The kind that strip illusions. The kind that test architecture. The kind that ask, did you build this for image or eternity? That's where you discover the real blueprint was never out there. It was always coded in your resilience. And now it's unfolding. You no longer fear storms. You speak to them. You don't wait for clear skies. You walk through fire. And not because you enjoy pain, because you understand refinement, because discomfort doesn't shake you anymore. It sharpens you. You've become immune to passive waiting, immune to delayed action, immune to fragile narratives. Your operating system has changed. This recalibration also shifts your surroundings. Conversations simplify, circles tighten, invitations reduce. The more aligned you become, the fewer detours you entertain. It's not isolation, it's concentration. You stop explaining your standards. You stop diluting your depth. You stop postponing your growth. Your environment stops being something you adapt to. It becomes something you create. Your language evolves. You stop using terms that apologize for power. You stop softening truth to be digestible. You stop performing humility. Real humility needs no display. It's seen in how deeply you listen, how deliberately you speak, how consistently you move. You start living in alignment with a frequency that doesn't flex for acceptance. Every day becomes an altar for action, not performance, devotion. Every moment an opportunity to honor purpose. Not chase status, but deepen service. You start realizing mastery is not a destination, it's a posture. An internal stance that says, I'm not done. And that's what separates those who rise once from those who never fall again. Hunger that endures, commitment that multiplies. And even in success, you remain grounded. Why? Because you've redefined elevation. It's not about ascending stages, it's about deepening roots. The taller the tree, the deeper the anchor. You don't expand without strengthening. You don't accelerate without sharpening. And now you understand, the most powerful growth is the kind no one sees. You embrace solitude, not as escape, but as strategy. Not as loneliness, but as alignment. Because it's in solitude you refine thought. It's in silence you realign vision. It's in stillness you sharpen voice. And that voice, it no longer echoes others. It carries weight. Not from volume, but from truth. And truth never needs validation. It simply stands. You no longer chase identity, you build it. Not by mimicking, but by remembering. You stop outsourcing authority. You stop requesting permission. You stop waiting for signals. You move from instinct. You respond from awareness. You lead without trying. You impact without planning. Because now your life is an offering, not a performance. Time no longer feels linear. You see patterns unfold. You connect pieces others miss. You feel shifts before they happen. Not because of intellect, but because of attunement. You've become sensitive to energy, disciplined with intention, precise with direction. You no longer just act, you execute. You no longer guess, you know. You no longer try, and even as the world spins, you remain still, not passive, anchored, not stagnant, certain. You see through illusions, you feel beneath distractions, you navigate with simplicity. And that simplicity, it's powerful, because clarity always outperforms complexity. And you now are clarity walking, focus in motion, power in form, light in structure. So when others ask, what changed? You won't have an answer. Not because you're hiding something, but because the shift can't be explained. It can only be experienced. And they'll feel it in your presence, in your words, in your eyes. You won't need to prove. You'll simply be not above, not below, just real. That's when you know you've transcended imitation. You've transcended doubt. You've transcended force. You've entered embodiment. An embodiment can't be faked. It can't be borrowed. It can't be sold. It's earned. Slowly, privately, repeatedly, through unseen hours, through relentless refinement, through quiet devotion. And here you are, still rising, still rooted, still building, not from noise, but from essence. remaining in quiet strength, a presence develops that speaks before expression forms. Every glance, every breath, every gesture reveals a language deeper than syllables, deeper than audible tones. It's communication born from alignment, untouched by fabrication. Those attuned to its frequency recognize it instantly. They stop, they listen without being told to. They lean in, not because of volume, but because of vibration. Something beneath the surface commands it. There's no introduction, no persuasion, only resonance. This resonance can't be learned through textbooks or replicated by mimicking another's blueprint. It rises when someone walks, in complete congruence with purpose. Not for approval, not for reward, but because they simply cannot do otherwise. Each action becomes sacred. Each choice becomes deliberate. Nothing is wasted. Every interaction carries weight, and that weight cannot be denied. It's felt. It's remembered. It leaves an imprint long after the moment ends. When you reach that level of clarity, indecision evaporates. You stop questioning your next step because your entire being already knows. Doubt shrivels under the heat of absolute alignment. You no longer entertain alternatives to integrity. There is only one path, and it becomes so clear, so obvious, so undeniable, that walking away from it would feel like betrayal, not of others, but of self. That kind of loyalty to your highest standard becomes your compass. This compass never points outside. It pulls inward. It draws you toward becoming, toward truth that's alive and unshakable. The world may shift. Circumstances may stretch or tighten, but that internal orientation remains unwavering. And because of that, your direction never depends on trends, fads, or external movements. It's internal gravity. It doesn't require confirmation. It simply pulls. While others chase novelty, you remain rooted in essence. You're not distracted by noise because you've already heard the signal. You don't get shaken by opposition because you've already faced your own reflection and didn't flinch. You've already walked through shadow. You've already held uncertainty in both hands and refused to fold. That journey isn't obvious to onlookers, but its result cannot be hidden. It echoes in your presence. It shines through restraint. It vibrates through minimalism. You don't need much to say everything. You stop reacting. You start responding. You don't seek to correct. Your example realigns by existing. You no longer need to control environments. You simply embody an atmosphere so potent, it reshapes surroundings naturally. You become the thermostat, not the thermometer. You influence temperature, you don't reflect it. Your mood, your rhythm, your pace, they don't fluctuate based on what surrounds you. They remain calibrated. This constancy is not rigidity. It's depth, it's fluidity within precision. It's being both water and foundation. You adapt without compromise. You stretch without dilution. You elevate without detachment. You remain human, accessible, honest, but with a boundary of presence that deflects anything misaligned. People sense it before comprehension catches up. They might not understand what it is, but they'll say you feel different. You're not just confident, you're settled. You're not chasing influence. You're anchored in impact. You're not demanding attention. You command it by simply arriving. These outcomes are never accidental. They result from intentional cultivation. You stopped feeding narratives that kept you limited. You stopped entertaining roles that no longer served your calling. You stopped allowing comfort to override growth. You chose discomfort until comfort recalibrated around a higher standard. You embraced discipline not as restriction but as liberation. Through repetition, you dismantled identities that no longer matched your future. Each decision carved character. Each moment of stillness unveiled something essential. You saw through illusion. You stepped past superficial layers until the raw truth stared back, and you didn't blink. You welcomed it. You studied it. You allowed it to refine, to prune, to distill. And from that distillation, power emerged. Quiet, steady, durable. From that foundation, action becomes organic. You're no longer pushing, you're pulled. Pulled by something greater than incentive. Greater than ambition, something sacred. Call it calling, mission, design, it doesn't matter. Words limit what you now live. And because you live it, the world around you rearranges. Opportunities gravitate. Connections evolve. Energy shifts. You no longer chase What's aligned finds you. And when it does, you don't hesitate. You don't shrink. You don't second guess. Preparation met opportunity, and response is effortless. There's no pretending. There's no posturing. There's only truth meeting timing. You've paid in practice. You've earned fluency in your own frequency. And now that frequency speaks louder than noise, clearer than slogans, deeper than strategy. From here, expansion becomes inevitable. Not just externally, but internally. Your capacity grows. Not because you force scale, but because your container deepens. You hold more responsibility without being weighed down. You carry more vision without being distracted. You execute without burnout because your fuel is eternal. It doesn't depend on circumstances, it flows from alignment. That kind of sustainability is rare. It comes from refusal to betray your pace. You're not sprinting for quick wins. You're walking in cadence with destiny. Not rushing, not delaying, just calibrated movement. You trust timing because you trust alignment. You no longer fear missing something because you've made peace with the fact that anything not meant cannot stay. Anything meant cannot leave. So your attachment to outcomes fades. You release expectations not from apathy, but from assurance. You don't cling to results. You steward processes. You don't manipulate outcomes. You magnify presence. You show up fully in whatever moment requires your essence. And because of that, every seed you plant carries longevity. Your relationships mirror this. They deepen, they purify, they align. You attract those walking their own path, committed to growth, allergic to pretense. Dialogues expand. Silences become sacred. Shared vision matters more than shared history. Mutual purpose overrides temporary emotion. Loyalty is no longer about proximity, it's about shared resonance. Even conflict transforms. You no longer avoid friction. You embrace refinement. You engage with maturity. You speak with clarity. You listen without agenda. You remain grounded amidst misunderstanding. You don't react to offense. You respond with discernment. You guard peace without forfeiting courage. And in doing so, you create environments where trust flourishes. Creativity also takes new form. You no longer create to impress. You express to liberate. Expression becomes offering. You don't over-polish. You allow imperfection. You prioritize truth over polish. Because you're not performing. You're transferring energy, and that energy, if real, will reach exactly who it's meant to without distortion. Nothing forced. Nothing diluted. Just resonance. This is what happens when someone dares to repeat truth until it shapes identity. When reflection becomes habit. When exposure to excellence becomes daily nourishment. When intention governs every part of the structure. You're not merely improving, you're transforming, not slightly, entirely. And that transformation doesn't require marketing. It speaks louder than announcement. It carries further than slogans. And so the cycle continues, not as a loop, but as ascension. With every layer shed, clarity sharpens. With every revelation, courage expands. With every challenge, resilience thickens. You don't outgrow challenges, you integrate them. You don't run from resistance, you absorb wisdom. Every experience, every season, every obstacle becomes part of the tapestry. And through that tapestry, others feel possibility. You become permission without preaching, proof without pressure. Example without ego. Just a living, breathing, grounded testament to what becomes possible when someone listens, truly listens, to what calls them forward, and answers without excuse. Influence never shouts, it simply remains, woven through every moment like a thread others follow without noticing. It doesn't announce itself, doesn't demand eyes or echo noise. It exists in what lingers, in what transforms others without needing explanation. You don't chase that kind of force. You become it. Through decision, through repetition, through presence lived instead of described. It can't be mimicked, only developed through lived truth. And once it's earned, everything you encounter begins bending toward it. Not through control, but through gravitational pull. This draw isn't found in surface behavior or memorized tactics. It radiates from alignment between soul and action. When every movement emerges from internal authenticity, you reach a state beyond formulas. No templates exist here, only intuition, precision sharpened by self-honesty. Not performance, not ritual, but understanding, pure, unfiltered awareness that cannot be purchased, cannot be copied, cannot be manufactured. It must be cultivated through consistency so deep, even fatigue learns to respect your momentum. At this level, you no longer question what's possible. You stop asking whether you belong. That doubt dies quietly in the shadow of unwavering commitment. Not because you declared anything out loud, but because you didn't exit the process when it stopped being convenient. While others scattered, you stayed rooted. While applause faded, you kept building. Without witness, without reward, with a kind of resolve that doesn't crumble under uncertainty. And in that solitude, refinement began. Each solitary decision you made, each internal standard you honored in silence, each time you elevated without expectation, all of it compounded. Each action stitched depth into your framework. No part wasted, nothing arbitrary, all of it counted. That's the secret those still on the surface can't grasp. Depth isn't glamorous, but it's where indestructible people are made. Eventually, those around you begin sensing something different. They can't articulate it. It's not in your words, not even in your accomplishments. It's in your vibration. You carry something whole, something complete. The noise doesn't touch it. It holds despite conditions. It speaks without volume. It's the kind of calm that unsettles everything untrue. You didn't manufacture that. You lived through what it took to uncover it. Unshakable individuals never arrive through chance. They rise through fire, silent fires no one clapped for. Their excellence was never a goal. It was a side effect of decisions made while no one noticed. That's why they last. Because nothing external gave it to them, so nothing external can take it away. Their process belonged to them alone. They bled for every inch. And now, their very existence carries proof. Every action you now take isn't about effort. It's about alignment. Precision has replaced urgency. You don't run anymore. You place. You don't scatter, you position. Every move arises from internal authority. You're no longer guessing, you're flowing. That fluidity came from mastering structure. That freedom was born from boundaries. Because you've learned without structure, intention evaporates. Without direction, creativity fractures. So now, you operate with boundaries that protect greatness. That greatness isn't something loud, it's something quiet, almost invisible until it's needed. It waits, it watches. It prepares. And when called, it delivers. Not out of fear, out of readiness. That's the posture you now live in. Preparation, not panic. Readiness, not reaction. It's why your presence brings clarity where there was confusion. You don't speak more. You speak truer. Fewer words, more power. Because you understand that real communication isn't about volume. It's about integrity between thought and speech. You hold yourself differently now. Not from arrogance, but from responsibility. You carry what others are still chasing. Not titles, not fame, ownership. Real responsibility where every outcome starts inside. Where blame no longer fits, because power doesn't outsource direction. And because you've accepted that you no longer fear setbacks. You no longer dodge resistance. You embrace it knowing it sharpens the edge of mastery. Challenges come, but they find you already fortified. No panic. Just posture. No flinching, just recalibration. Where others collapse, you recenter. Because you've trained for storms by walking through droughts. You've faced lack without losing identity. You've carried pressure without becoming brittle. So now you don't just survive, you sculpt with resistance. You turn it into momentum others didn't see coming. That unseen force you now radiate didn't come from achievement. It came from refusal. Refusal to negotiate your standard. Refusal to water down your expression. Refusal to hand over your vision for temporary ease. That kind of refusal builds power that doesn't fade. It strengthens over time, quietly, unstoppably. People wonder how you sustain it. They look for routines, tools, hacks. But it isn't about tools. It's about intent. A level of intent so ruthless, distraction no longer finds space to root. You don't entertain drama. You don't respond to pettiness. Not because you're avoiding, because your energy doesn't accommodate nonsense. You've outgrown all that. You've set fire to behaviors that no longer match your trajectory. And through that fire, you've emerged sharp. Not harsh, clear. Not brittle, focused. not cold, exact. You don't wait for validation because you've already claimed your own identity. You don't ask for space, you build it. You don't shrink to fit. You expand until your presence rewrites the atmosphere. That rewriting isn't chaotic. It's silent. Others feel it before they understand it. It's a shift in vibration, a recalibration of frequency. You've stopped adapting to others' discomfort. You've stopped folding yourself to fit false containers. You've created your own blueprint and walked it long enough for the world to take notice. Without screaming, without demanding, just through consistent embodiment. At this point, you realize something even deeper. It was never about more. It was always about less. Less fluff, less doubt, less delay. And in that removal, what remained was essential. What remained was unbreakable. What remained was you, undiluted, undistracted, undivided. Now, as others waver, you remain. As environments fluctuate, you hold. As voices rise and fall, you carry tone that doesn't change with the wind. Not because you're rigid, because you've clarified what deserves permanence. That clarity echoes in every area now. From conversation to creation, from relationships to rest. You move from a grounded sense of knowing, not from stubbornness, but from discernment. You're not here to prove anything. You're here to embody something. And that embodiment speaks louder than justification. You've reached the point where even silence speaks for you. Your stillness is louder than their noise. Your presence anchors before you say a word. And the reason it does, because you earned it, not through luck, through fire, through decision, through relentless alignment. And still, you're not done. Not because you lack, because you evolve. Not because you're chasing, because you honor the call. And the call never ends, it deepens, it widens, it stretches. Each stage brings another layer to peel, another edge to smooth, another truth to carry. You welcome it, because that's what living awake looks like. For this series, watch this daily for 14 days. Your mindset will never be the same. There is intentionally no conclusion at the end of each keynote. That's by design. The goal is to keep each keynote flowing continuously into the next, creating a sense of ongoing momentum, exactly as you requested. No wrap-up, no final summary, just one immersive journey where the transformation never pauses and each part builds upon the last. However, if you're asking for a final conclusion at the end of the 14th keynote, I can definitely prepare a powerful, emotional closing piece that ties the full journey together. Just let me know once you reach that point, and I'll deliver something unforgettable to seal the series.